Hi, good evening, everybody. I am Reverend Sherri James, and I am the Senior Minister for Understanding Principles for Better Living Church, or better known as Up Church. And I am also the creator of the Metaphysical Bible Hangout. And what you see me doing, my eyes darting, as I'm quickly trying to pull up my PowerPoint presentation. So I am excited. The summertime is wonderful because we get daylight, so that's all that warm light flowing in, and so you'll see the shift in time as as we go on through the evening. We are in the midst of an incredible series called Mystical Christianity, the Teachings of Mystical Christianity, and we have been looking at mystical interpretations of traditional concepts. And so tonight we're going to be looking at the concept of the true church, and is there such thing as the true church? And if you want to follow along, if this is your first time here, you can actually go to my website. You can download the what is it called? The PDF. We're working from the text. These are the pages I pulled out so I could scan them for you guys. The book itself is out of print. The author is Dr. James C. Lewis, but we spoke to the publisher, and the publisher gave us permission to distribute a PDF, and so the PDF is available, and you can download that for free, and it's available on the site. So tonight we're going to talk about the true church. Is there such a thing as a true church? And if there is, did Jesus start it? And I think this is going to be a really powerful discussion because we're going to get into some things that are an area where I have been really delving, which is the building of consciousness, which, I think anyone that's been with this teaching for long enough knows that no, there is no such thing as a true church. But we're going to talk about those concepts and what you've been taught, and look at what it means, what the true church actually really is. Our outline is pretty straightforward. We're going to have some announcements. I do need to have a conversation with you guys about the next series so I can finish my preparations. We're going to talk about, have our opening prayer, what is mystical Christianity. We're going to talk about the literal story behind the true Christ. We're going to talk about developing traditions in early Christianity, a mystical reading on the true church, the New Thought Way, and then Q&A. The Bible Hangout. This is a weekly Bible Hangout. I always want to let you know why this is important to me, and to be available to this, and to rearrange everything that I'm doing so that I am available on a Thursday night, even when I have to travel, or even when there's something going on with Jordan or church or whatever. And the reason being is, one, I love the Bible. I just love the Bible. It is probably one of the most fascinating texts that you will ever read. And one of the things that I was just really interested in doing was demystifying it. I think that there's so much majesty and royalty and beauty in the Bible, even when you know how the Bible is put together. I don't think that goes away when you learn how the Bible came together, and when you learn the history, and when you begin to understand the scholarship. We're going to talk about some of that tonight in terms of what we know and what we don't know, and so it's to me, this is the kind of information that people should be taking out to their people, that people should be taking out into the streets and making people aware that it should not be a secret, that it should be, everyone should have this information. That's how I feel. And so it's important to me, and it's worth whatever sacrifice I have to make personally, in terms of time and effort and even money and whatever. And so that's why I do it and bring it and make it available for free to you. And I encourage you to take advantage of it. Share these videos with your friends. If this is helping you, leave a testimony on one of the videos, because it makes it easier if somebody's searching for church on YouTube and then they pull up this information. So all of those things are helpful, but that's why I do it. That's why it's important to me. I mentioned that it is free. It is free to you. There is no cost to this, but I do encourage you to consider doing a love offering. There are many costs involved with bringing this to you, and so a gift of any size is greatly appreciated. If you decide to make a gift, you can go right to my website at revsherri.com, and there's a donate button on there, and I thank you in advance for any gift, and I thank you everyone who has already made a gift. I'm very grateful for your support. Thank you. There is always a companion piece on the blog, and you can follow along at revsherri.com. And the one today, is on the true church. And so you can follow along. It's kind of a precursor to what we talk about on Thursday night. We saved a seat for you, our Sunday worship experience. So this past Sunday, Father's Day, was like, I can't come back and say every service is like our best service, but like this was really just off the chain. This was really amazing. We had, well, first of all, just an incredible turnout. But Reverend Nirvana Reginald Morgan Gale, got that name right. Reverend Nirvana is how I refer to him. He is a Center for Spiritual Living minister. He's also the co-founder of Agape, along with the Reverend Michael Beckwith. And he's such an incredible personality. He helped us when we were in seminary. We had several things that we needed to do that just because of our church and where we were and how we were structured, we just didn't even have those opportunities. And so the things that we needed to complete for our practicum, he got involved with helping us to do that. We met with him. He advised us. It was just really remarkable. He's really been a mentor, a big brother, someone to turn to. He had a health challenge late last year, and we had already asked him to be a part of our Father's Day service, and he wrote me a wonderful email and declined, or no, he accepted, but then when everything was happening, he said, I don't know where things are going to be, and I'm thinking that I need to, say you should look for somebody else. So we did. We looked for someone else, and we thought we had someone, and that fell through. And then Wednesday before the service, he sent an email and said, hey, I'm available. I don't know if you got anybody. And it turned out he must have missed my reply email back to him saying, okay, we'll find somebody else. And so he thought we didn't have anyone. Anyway, it was a transcendent service, and we were his first service back after returning to form. He was remarkable. So one of the things that I owe you is I need to put yes, Ray says, will you be posting the Father's Day service on SoundCloud? Yes, I will be posting it on SoundCloud. So that's happening. But the sermon was just, the theme was a love letter to all fathers. And I feel like, one of the things that was important to me is that we make such a big deal about Mother's Day. Mother's Day is like, it's a virtual parade, right? And then we come to Father's Day, and it's like an afterthought. And so my goal was to make Father's Day as big as Mother's Day, if not bigger, and I feel like we did that. So I will definitely post that sermon in SoundCloud, and I'll put it in an email out to you guys so you guys can have access to that. So here's what I want to know. What do you want to know? I'm working on the next class, and you guys can unmute yourself for this or type a note. But what do you want to know about prayer? And I want to take some notes while you tell me what you want for the next series, because there's so many directions that we can go in terms of prayer. It would help me to narrow the information. I'll tell you some resources that I have. I have a ton of resources on what is true prayer. We can work from Phil Moore's Teach Us to Pray. We can, Marvin asks, how many lessons is it? It's open. We can make it a short series, we can make it a 4-parter, or we can make it an extended series. One that's a valuable resource, one of my favorite go-tos, especially when I'm working with people privately, is Catherine Punder's The Dynamic Laws of Prayer, and that is a phenomenal text. That definitely is at least a 12-part lesson, at least a 12-part series. But it's open, so you guys tell me, what you are interested in. Phyllis says silent prayer. Okay, got it. Silent, definitely. That for sure we will include. Yeah. Marvin says, I like both Fillmore and Ponder. They're both awesome. Andrea says, I'd like to study the Catherine Ponder's book. That's an awesome book. Ray says, I think prayer deserves to be an extended series. Ponder and Fillmore works would be great. Okay, got it, got it. And Phyllis, just so you know, if we do go with the Ponder book, um, that book covers silence very, very well, like in several like lessons. Uh, okay, Barbara says the dynamic laws of prayer. Okay, dynamic laws of prayer. So a lot of you probably have this in your library, which is great. It's not public domain, so I won't be able to PDF the chapters. Ron says the difference between prayer and affirmations. Okay, good. I'll make sure I just answer that question. Okay, so the dynamic laws of prayer. Please know she has a couple of books on prayer. She's like Pray and Grow Rich, the Prospering Power of Prayer. So I'll be sure because the dynamic laws of prayer is kind of a thick book, like that type of thickness. I'll make sure that I will send the link in the email with the link to get the right book if you don't have it in your library. Many of you probably already have it in your library, but just so that we're all working from the same text. It's the Dynamic Laws of Prayer. All right. Wonderful. Thank you for that. That was easy. The scripture for this series that we have been in and coming to an end is study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And I feel like that's what we have been doing. We have been working to rightly divide the word of truth. And so let's just take a moment to become present to right now. There is only one power, there is only one presence, and that power and presence is God, the good, omnipotent, the everywhere, evenly present spirit of absolute good. We just give thanks and praise for this opportunity that we have to share with one another, to fellowship together, to grow, to stretch, to just be more than we imagined ourselves to be. And we thank you, God, because we know that there's a seed that's being sown when we show up every week. And there are changes that are happening in us. We're becoming more ethical. We're becoming more in alignment with you. We are growing. We are stretching. We are getting better. And I can feel it. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for the privilege of just being able to show up and do this every Thursday night. Grateful for that. Thank you. And I bless tonight. I ask that you work with this lesson, shape the questions so that what is drawn out of me and into expression is exactly what your people need. And I thank you, God, for just guiding this conversation. I put this class in your hands. I know that all is well and that this is going to be our best class ever. In the name and the nature of the one that is called the Christ, I affirm that it is so, and that's how I'll let it be. And so it is. So what is mystical Christianity? Hopefully you have been forming an opinion of what mystical Christianity is in this extended conversation that we've been having for the last 15 weeks has helped to give you some ways to talk about what mystical Christianity is. But boiled down to its essence, mystical Christianity seeks to uncover the theology of Jesus and to emulate it. It recognizes Jesus as way shower and master teacher. The term Savior is not widely used because it does not mean the same thing in mystical Christianity. Mystical Christianity seeks a deeper meaning in the Christian teaching, and then we're going to talk about that tonight when we talk about the true church. It reaches for the kingdom of God within. It approaches each Bible story to find insight on the mysteries of life. It recognizes that a literal reading of the Bible does not respect the text. And again, that is definitely something we're going to dig into tonight when we're talking about what we actually find in our Gospels. Mystical Christianity is built upon 5 basic principles. Every lesson, every interpretation, every concept, everything that comes out of the mouth of any teacher and that we're offering as a guide for you in terms of any interpretations that you do, that they fall in line with these 5 principles. One, the omnipresence of God, that you would not sign off or say okay to or agree with a concept of God that would suggest that God is somewhere localized. So, for example, let me tell you where this plays out, because I hear this a lot with New Thought teachers, as I hear people say, oh, well, that person, made their transition, they've gone to be with God. And my question to you is, how so? How so? Because if God is everywhere evenly present, then this concept of death being a taking you home is out of alignment with the omnipresence of God. And we say it so often that it falls out of our mouths without us even thinking about it. In a heartbeat, someone will say, oh, well, they're in a better place. Really? How so? If God is everywhere evenly present, then the Spirit is right here, right now, right where I am. And the better place is where I go in my mind, not where I go in my body. And so, it is being mindful of your language, because as you are being true to the principle, and you want to be true to the principle because whatever it is that you believe presses out in your expression. And so this idea of a God that you are going to is as part of a duality consciousness, right? It's part of that consciousness that believes that God and me are separate, and we are not. It's based on the divinity of humankind, that you cannot come up with an interpretation that makes any person less than divine. Any interpretation that sees someone as not divine or less than divine is out of alignment with the spiritual teaching. But let's talk about how that shows up in practice, right? So one of the things that happened with Johnny Coleman is that she went to Unity, and though this was what Unity was teaching, they still had their own growth. She couldn't live in the dorm rooms when she went there. And she was actually the person that integrated, well, let me back up. They still didn't let her live in a dorm room. She lived somewhere but she got to live on campus, but it wasn't in someone's dorm room, right? So it's even when we are espousing this teaching, there's still a stretch in us to be able to acknowledge the divinity of all people, to be able to see it, to call it forward, and to insist on it, and to challenge ourselves to, so that we can. Andrea says, what does 2 Corinthians 5:8 mean? If you can post that, just because I don't know that verse by heart, if you can post it, I can address that, Andrea. The value and power of thought, that our thoughts are things, that they have shape and form, even though they are invisible, and that as we think them, they point us in a particular direction, and they become our experience. And so the value of thinking is that you have the ability to think anything. The power of it is that what you think becomes your experience. Practicing the presence is also a principle, which is that we can practice the presence of God. And this is some of what Phyllis was alluding to when she mentioned wanting to talk about silent prayer, because that is a form of practicing the presence of God, of being at a state of at one-ment. And we practice that presence not just in the form of sitting in a prayer posture, but in our everyday lives, that we have to be, again, holding our own feet to the fire, that we have to be more godlike in our interactions with each other, that it is very possible to find yourself in a situation where you might make a snide remark. I had an experience like that earlier this week or last week, and you've got to, it's always being on your P's and Q's, that if something can push your button, that's a button you need to work on in prayer. Marvin says, absent from the body, present with the Lord. My pastor used to say that line 1,000,000 times: to die is to gain, to live is for Christ. That was another one. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So the first thing is always remember that when we're reading the Bible, we're reading a point of view. And so Paul very much did believe in an idea of a God in the sky, and not necessarily a God that was everywhere evenly present. And he was evolving in his thought, and very evolved in his thought. But for him, God was separate and apart. Andrea says, yes, Marvin, I grew up with all of those scriptures too. So Constance says, how is it that some people attend New Thought centers for years and then turn around and go back to a traditional church? I'm trying to understand that. I don't know how you can not know. I feel like there's such a thing as you can't unknow. But what I do get is that that you go where the soul needs, right? And people are where they are because where they are is meeting the need of the soul. And so while it seems odd to leave a teaching, like a mystical teaching, and to go back to something that is rigid and doctrinal seems odd. It seems odd to me. But every place that you are is where your soul needs to be. Every place that you are, there are lessons, that there is a principle of divine placement that says, I am where I am, I cannot be where I am not. And so where I am is where I'm supposed to be. And where I am, that God has planted lessons and blessings where I am. And I am going to draw from I'm going to open my heart to God and draw from all of the lessons and the blessings of this moment. Everything unfolds according to spiritual law. So someone walking out of a church with a mystical Christian teaching and walking back into a church with a traditional Christian teaching, it's still unfolding according to law, and that there is something there for their soul to get that wasn't being met or wasn't being offered in a traditional church. I mean, in a mystical church. Marvin says they know. Hopefully, they're taking some ideas back with them. I think so. I think that wherever you go, you rub off on them and they rub off on you. I know that happens with in this setting, that I'm rubbing off on you guys, but you guys are just as much rubbing off on me. In terms of our interaction and how we communicate and the things that we talk about and the things that matter to us, there are things that you guys bring up in the chat that probably on my own would not necessarily be things that I would think about, but because you brought it up, it's something that I'm going to pay attention to. Constance, I'm with you. However, I try to respect every person's decision. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Andrea says, could it have meant in a meditative state leaving the body in meditation to achieve oneness with God? Well, mystically, that's exactly what it means. But again, the body is not just this physical body, right? Everything in your world is representative of your body. And the thing is that when you pray, and this is something that, since we're going to be using the Catherine Ponder text, that we pray in the body, because it's in the body that I'm able to go and do the work of God. That when I'm out of my body, however I leave my body, if I leave my body because I'm stuffing my body with food, trying to stuff down feelings, if I leave my body because I'm out compulsively spending, trying to buy something to fill the hole that can't be filled materially, if I'm drinking my way out of my body, if I'm drugging my way out of my body, whatever that is, the thing is that the body is how I accomplish God's work. So we're still dealing with a concept. Even though we can mystically interpret what Paul is saying, we're still dealing with a God concept that thinks that things are better external to the body, outside of the body. And the Jesus teaching is learning to be in the body and do the work of the Father. to learn to do the work of the Father in the body that I am, meaning in the circumstances, not just this physical flesh body, but in the circumstances that I am, that I'm not waiting for things to get right for me to be right. That I'm going to be right, and whatever else is around, so be it. Let it all fall down, right? You know, I had an experience earlier this week where I had something not go the way that I wanted it to go. And I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm doing the work of my Father. Let it all fall down. If it all falls down, it all fell down. So what? Let it all fall down, because I am about my Father's business. And so, and maybe another way to think about it, this just came to me, is, not being in the body is not being attached to the body. I'm not attached to things being pretty in the outer. I'm not attached to things being quote unquote right in the outer. I don't need things to be right in the outer for me to be right inwardly and get my work done, meaning my God work done. So, perhaps we can think of absence as detachment, but yeah, I would have to sit with that and prayerfully and think about it some more. Those are just kind of some immediate things that come up for me, that we're talking about Paul's God concept, and we cannot get around that. We have to consider where Paul is and how Paul understood God. And we can't superimpose our God concept onto him. But two, interpreted mystically, that we could be talking about a meditative state. We also can be talking about a state of being where we're detached from the body, meaning we're in the body, we're making use of these physical things, but the physical things don't have us. That I haven't lost touch with the fact that I am master of my fate, captain of my soul. Marvin says, I agree with Andrea. It is a question of consciousness. Andrea says, yay, I'm a metaphysician for real now, interpreting stuff metaphysically. Yes, girl, you are. Constance says, Ray, I do respect each person's spiritual journey and know that there are many roads to God. So it's just curious. Yeah. Marvin, I finished a book on theta healing. Theta waves are powerful for healing mysticism and prayer. Okay. Abraham teaching. Now what? Oh, Abraham teaches be happy now. Yes, Constance. Alita says people that don't take classes don't learn the principles from Sunday service. The other reason is that traditional churches allow you to use God as a crutch. New Thought teaches you to take responsibility for your own life. Alita, I would have to say 100%. That is, if you are not ready to take 100%, meaning I'm responsible for everything that happens. I'm responsible for everything that happens. And that's not easy. That's not easy. I would love to lay some of this stuff at the foot of somebody. It don't even have to be a devil. I just want somebody else to be responsible for some of the stuff that's happening in my experience. And the truth is, I'm the magnet in my life. And everything that's coming to me is unfolding according to divine principle. And that's not a blame thing. That's a responsibility thing. And when I can take responsibility for it, I can do something about it. Ray says, yeah, Constance, it baffles me as well. However, I wonder if it acts as a security blanket. It takes real courage and a strong sense of self to step out of the mold. I think so. Ray, I agree with you. I think it definitely takes a strong sense of self to step out of the mold. I think it's scary. And I think that even New Thought on some level is a mold. We haven't really dealt with Joel Goldsmith, and maybe we might dig into a little Joel Goldsmith. But Joel Goldsmith, listen, this might be a rocket ship for somebody, but that is like a jet propulsion, like next level quantum leap. In fact, I haven't even really picked up a whole lot of Joel Goldsmith, so maybe we could do some of that together before the end of the year. But it like he's like, just go be God, right? Just, all this, meditating and just go be God. Like he's like, just go be it. Like just take it to the next level, like right now. Ron says, could that be interpreted that even if you're absent from the body, you're still present with the Lord? Yeah, even if you're, yeah, you could say that, but again, we can't separate the fact that Paul and that community definitely had an idea of God that was away from them and separate and apart from them, and that you went to God, right? Because this is part of Paul was a Jew, and this is part of the Jewish understanding of God. So God, while God may have been on your side and you may have been the chosen people, there was still God somewhere else, but not where you are, right? Marvin says, Neville Goddard, you attract what you are. Yes. Now, we need to study some Neville Goddard. That would be a good thing to pick up. Okay. All right. Let me keep moving. The last thing is the law of demonstration, which we kind of said that, which is that things come just. They don't come out of nowhere. Things don't just happen. They happen just. So a literal reading on the true church. There's a little typo there. Forgive that typo at the bottom. The true church. So here's the thing. There are some Christians who not only believe that Christianity is the only true religion, but that their particular denomination is the only true church. The even more conservative element would say that unless one actually belonged to their church, that person could not be saved. There were verses given. Growing up, I was taught that Christianity, and specifically Christianity that saw Jesus as Lord and Savior, was the only way to understand God. And all other ways were wrong. And if I followed them, even asked questions about them, I would go straight to hell. My mom tells the story, part of where I get my mystical interest and leanings from was that I was raised with a mother who studied a lot of this unknowingly. I should say unknowingly, but like there was no term new thought around it when she was digging into it, and she tells a story of the learning to meditate. And I think she had studied with Silva mind control or something like that, but it taught you how to meditate. And one of the things that they would have you say when you meditate is that I am safe, nothing can harm me, as you go deeper and deeper into meditation. And her thing was, so if I need to say that, I don't need to be going that deep. Like, what is it that's going to show up that I need to be forewarned that I am safe? And so, and it's definitely some of that Baptist upbringing influenced the fear around really, really, really digging into some of these mystical teachings. Marvin says you were a Baptist as well. Yes, I was. Southern missionary. Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. Although I don't know if we ever went on any missions. I cannot recall one group that went on a mission, but the name of the church was Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. I don't know what I thought missionary meant because there were no missions. So, who knows? The verses that were given to support this point of view. John 14:6, Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. You will hear that recited again and again as proof that this is how Jesus understood it, and that this is the way that we are supposed to understand it. The other verse that's given is Romans 10:9. If you confess with your lips that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And this is your proof that any other version of Christianity is wrong. So, is there a true church, and did Jesus start it? And here's the thing. Most conversations about whether or not there is a true church presume that Jesus started or intended to start a new religion, and he did not. And so one of the things that we have to be mindful of and remember is that Jesus was deeply Jewish. His followers were Jewish. He spoke to them as a Jew speaking to Jews. There was no point in his teaching where he was seeking to break away from the teaching. If anything, he was looking to be a better Jew, but that would be about it. And he was not coming to do away with the law, the Mosaic law. He was actually tightening the screws on the Mosaic law. Often you will hear people say, oh, Jesus did away with the law. But that's actually, even from a literal standpoint, that is false. That what you find when you look at how Jesus approached the law, he was tightening the screws, because he would say, you have heard it said that thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife. But I say, even if you think it in your mind, you have heard that it said that you shall, I don't know they're calling it the antitheses. I don't know them by heart. So if somebody has them, if you can look them up. But those verses are a tightening of the screws. Basically, not just don't covet, don't even think it. Like, not just don't say it, don't even imagine it, right? That there is this, he is taking the teaching to a deeper level. When he criticized people in the way that they worship God, it wasn't don't worship God. It was be true through and through. Don't just do something outwardly. You've got to be right inwardly. That what you do inwardly is what is important, and that people seem to miss. Marvin says, I would venture to say that most founders of churches did not want to be founders of churches. Yeah, I would agree. Alita says, thoughts are things. Andrea says, as a metaphysician, the true church is in my own heart and mind and my thoughts and feelings of my congregation. Yes, ma'am. Barbara says, Goddard is deep. I would need help via interpretation to help me understand Goddard's teaching. I'm open to him. I simply would need a little hand-holding. Barbara, you would love Neville Goddard. I have a love affair with Neville Goddard. It would be, yeah, maybe we'll pick something short by the end of the year. Alethea says, how do we unmagnetize? So we're actually going to talk about that. So Alethea, if I don't answer it specifically, ask it again towards the end, but it's actually in the lesson, that in terms of how do we unmagnetize or demagnetize. Same thing. How do we unmagnetize ourselves for the things that we have been magnetized for? So I will absolutely touch on that tonight. One other thing I wanted to say, I'm looking at my notes right here. One of the things that we have to remember, and when we're talking about the old lens, and it's sometimes it's so hard to see when we're looking at the old lens, but the thing that we have to remember is that what we are reading in our Bible is several developing traditions in early Christianity. So I said this last week, but I'll say it again, or maybe it was last week, but we don't have originals of our Gospels. We don't have a way to know that what is on the page is actually what was in the original text. There is no way that we can stand on it with complete 100% certainty. The stories that are in our text were written some 40 years at least, that's the earliest, after, meaning put on paper. The stories were circulating, but they were being changed because just by fact of how people remember things. One of the goodies that I sent around for the MBH Insiders List is a talk that Bart Ehrman gave, where he talks about the research that he did into how people remember things. And there is no such thing as an objective memory, that we remember things according to how we relate to them based on what's happening in our world today. And what we remember is a function of who we are and what we're dealing with. And the stories that were remembered about Jesus were changed, they shifted, not out of malintent, but they shifted just because that's part of how people remembered stuff. The other thing that happened is that Jesus spoke Aramaic. His followers spoke Aramaic. The New Testament is written in Greek. So already you've got a language interpretation. So when we're looking at the text, we can't ignore these changes. I sent this, was this today? Did I include this? No, I don't think I included a link in the blog post for this. But Bart Ehrman got a question on his blog, and I'm just going to read you part of his answer. And he says, first, the person was asking about like the Galatians, and how do we know that Paul didn't write Galatians or did write Galatians? And he says, first, how do we know what the originals of this letter to the Galatians said? Strictly speaking, we can never know anything like this with 100% certainty. But I think many people have been led astray by some of the things I said and taken the matter too far. My point has always been that we cannot know with absolute, complete certainty what was said in each and every passage of the New Testament. That point, which I think cannot be refuted, is principally directed against fundamentalists who want to claim that every word of the Bible is inspired by God. How can we say the words were inspired if we don't know, in a lot of cases, what the words were? But that doesn't mean that we cannot know with relative certainty what is said in most parts of the New Testament. True, we can't have the level of certainty that fundamentalists require, which has always been my point, but we can have high levels of probability for lots of the Bible. And he goes on to answer his question in regards to the Galatians. But it's that we have relative certainty or probable certainty. But there is no way to look at what is in John or in any of the Pauline letters and say this is what it says, because we don't have any of the original text. And then the first time we get a manuscript, which isn't even a complete manuscript, and I showed you guys a picture last week, that manuscript will come from, say, the 4th century. So we're talking about 300 to 400 years after the life of Jesus, right? The reason, and they date it to around 70, earliest, or 50 for the letters of Paul or whatever, because they can look at like handwriting styles, they can look at the language that was used, because those things tend to be consistent within a certain time period. They look at the cultural references, the things that are mentioned, that things that would not have happened in Jesus' lifetime, so we know that it had to have happened been written after Jesus' lifetime. So we use all of these clues, but just because we date the gospel to the year 70 for Mark, and then the year 80 and 85 for Matthew and Luke, and then the year 90 to 95 for John, it does not mean we actually have texts from those years. The earliest text that we have, which I think is from John, this is a new area for me, not new, but I don't have all of the information for this area, is at least the year like 220, right? So we're still talking about 200 years after the life of Jesus. So there's a lot that when we're reading this, that we have to understand these traditions around Jesus, the things that people remembered around Jesus are traditions, and they are developing. And when you look at the Gospels chronologically, meaning in the order that they were written, you can start to see the evolution of this Jesus thought. Marcus Borg uses the term pre-Easter and post-Easter Jesus, that there is a pre-Easter Jesus that we don't really pay much attention to. If you're interested in studying that, we actually did a series in December around Marcus Borg's book, Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. But the pre-Easter Jesus was a rock star, was amazing. We don't even pay attention to the pre-Easter Jesus. All of the attention goes to the post-Easter Jesus, meaning the Jesus of the imaginations of the people after he had been crucified. And when most people are speaking of Jesus, what they're speaking of is what Marcus Borg calls the post-Easter Jesus. There's a whole conversation going on. I won't say that. Maybe we're going to do Goddard. You know what? Let me see if Goddard has a book on prayer. Eve says, I agree with Barbara. Goddard is really deep. There's a whole conversation that's happening in the chat and inside here. Ray says Neville has a fantastic chapter on prayer in his book Feeling is the Secret, which I would love to include while we are studying prayer. Yes. Marvin says faith is a feeling, faith is imagination. Goddard was brilliant. Andrea says I am not familiar with Goddard. Can't wait to become acquainted with him. Ray says Andrea, he will blow your mind, and yes, he will. Marvin says, Andrea, start with faith is your fortune. Okay. You know what? I'll look and see if he has a book on, meaning if he has a book on prayer from the books that I have. And if he doesn't, what I'll do is I will try to cobble together the different chapters that he has on prayer and put those together and then see how that fits with the Catherine Ponder stuff or feed it together. I'll figure it out. So I will include some Goddard in our conversation on prayer. Oh, that's going to be good. That's going to be good. Constance says, yeah, even Abraham says that Jesus would be upset that all the things that he talked about and was trying to get souls to understand their own divinity, that we get stuck on the cross. Yes. It's when you look at what the focus of his work is, and this is what comes out in the series that we did around November, December with Marcus Borg book, Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time, is you get this understanding that the pre-Easter Jesus, the Jesus who was the man who walked the earth, was very interested in a spiritual practice, and that there was an invitation that he was offering to people to come apart and learn to be one with God in practice. And it is after he passes that all of this attention gets placed on the cross, as if that were the greatest work that was done. But the greatest work and the work that enabled the cross is the work that happens before the cross. So it's a fascinating read, and the book again is Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. Meaning again is in the title, Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. And the author who made his transition a couple of years ago is Dr. Marcus Borg. Phenomenal teacher, not a New Thought person by any stretch, but just a very thoughtful Christian who really was looking for answers for his own faith, for his own understanding. So a mystical reading on the true church. Here's the thing. The true church is going to demand more of you than the traditional church has ever or will ever demand. There is a change in consciousness that must happen in order for the true church to be built in you. And one of the things, and Andrea said it earlier, one of the things that is part of the true church is to realize that the true church is a state of consciousness. We recognize and know and feel our oneness with God, rejoicing, giving thanks in this realization. In the true church, you are worshiping God. The value of collective worship is that it helps you concentrate. That when you are in a church experience, if the church experience is a good one, that what it enables you to do is to block out the world and just be with the power and the presence of God. That what we do on Sunday as a body, or Saturday, whatever day is your Sabbath, or the dates you practice with your church, that what we do is that we raise the level of the praise and the energy and the experience so high that while you are there, that that your entire attention is consumed with the energy intelligence of God. Worship requires concentration. The true church is within you. It is a state of consciousness in which you are concentrating on God. Because of the way that our lives are constructed and the ways that our lives are put together, it is very hard for us to concentrate for any length of time. And so consequently, it's hard to get anything done spiritually because there's so many things pulling on our attention. Anything can get our attention. Anything. I have a card that sits on my desk. It's upstairs, otherwise I'd show it to you. I have a note card that says, what would it take for you to work like there was $1 million in the bank, at least? What would it take for you? No, that's not the question. The question says, hold on. I texted it to someone, so I have it here. The question that I texted said, what do I need to do today to work or play like I have at least $1 million in the bank? What will it take for me to bring everything I have to this moment? Now, the goal is not necessarily $1 million in the bank, although that's nice. The goal is, how do I bring myself to the present moment where I am not worried about what is happening, what's going to happen, but where I can just be here now? If you're going to build the true church in you, the first thing you've got to learn to do is to be here now, to be in this present moment, to be available for what is happening right now. What happened before doesn't matter. What's coming up is unimportant. The only thing that matters, and the only place where you can do anything, is in the right now. And so many people do not have the skill set, because it is a skill. It's not you're not born with it, meaning some people have it, some people don't. It's not something that is excluded from some folks at birth. That most people do not have the ability to just be here right now. And so church, for them, is that opportunity. And they don't know what's happening. They just know it feels good. You go, you hear the preacher, they get tuned up. The choir gets to going at tambourine, whatever your tradition is. Hey, I grew up with a tambourine, a drum set, and piano and an organ, and all that was part of that worship experience. And the energy would just rise and rise and rise and rise, because what it's doing is that it's taking the collective attention of everyone and focusing it on the one power and the one presence. Now, you can do that at home. Or you can do that on the job, or you can do that on the street. You can do that anywhere. It's not required for you to be in a building. The true church is not a building. The true church is any place where you are, where you have your attention wholly concentrated on God. And the reason that this is not necessarily what happens in a concert, even though that's a highly euphoric experience, is because your attention is on the person, right? So you're at the Prince concert, but your attention is on the person. And the effectiveness of a church service, whether it's with an actual church or whether it's in your home by yourself, the effectiveness of a church service is how deeply can you give your attention to God and God alone. Some of us go to church, meaning to a physical church, and never give our attention to God. We're completely paying attention to what somebody else is doing. Or somebody can say to us, and we so on edge that anything can set us off in an instant. The church is in you. It has to happen in you. It's you. The true church is you. And it's a state of consciousness that you have the ability to go to anytime, anywhere, and any place. I got some comments here. Marvin says, I like the Amish, Mennonites, Quakers, and holiness groups. For them, church is 24/7 every day. Yes, Sue says, find you. Yes, find you. Find the real you. The you that is transcendent. The you that is amazing. Marvin says, if you didn't have to worry about money, what would you be doing? Is that the question? Well, you heard the question, but no, figure out what your distraction is. For me, money is my distraction. Being concerned about finances is my distraction. Being, thinking about like what's coming up. Okay, I got this coming up. And the figuring, right? But yours might be health. Somebody else's might be relationships. Somebody else's might be the fact that they're single and they don't want to be single. Or somebody else's might be that they're married and they don't want to be married. Or what? It's what has your attention. It's different for every person. What has your attention and is grabbing it so much that you're not in the present moment? What has you so occupied mentally that you're not available for God? Right? That you've got to be shaken out of yourself. For somebody else, it might be the fact that they're, 30, 35, heading to 40, and they don't have the things that they think they should have for 40, and they don't see any way to get them. Or, it depends on what your thing is. Everybody's thing is different. But the question is, what would you need to do today? And the reason I ask myself that question is because I want to jog my mind, because maybe I need to listen to a song to put me in that kind of mood. Or maybe I need to read some stuff, a good book, a portion of a good book, to put myself in that mindset. Like, what do I need to do to become available for that present moment, to be 100% present, to work like there are no cares, right? One of the things that I learned is that I've got to be specific. If I leave things too vague, like I'm working on a survey, and if I put in my calendar work on a survey, not gonna happen. What I've got to say is I'm going to read through the responses twice. I got to be specific, because if I'm not specific, my mind can go anywhere. Constance says, worship, we want to feel after God. Yes, you want to feel, so that's it. That's it. That's it. And God is a feeling experience. That's something that Reverend Della taught me, that you feel after God. And when I would go and I'd sit at her house and talk to her, she would explain to me how to reach that place, that feeling place where you feel it in here, and it it's a transcendent experience, and it feels like nothing else, and she would demonstrate it. She would just sit back in her chair, or many times we were in her bedroom, and she would be sitting up, and she'd be sitting, and she would show me how to just be present, how to just be there and be with God, not going for something, not trying to request something, not needing something, just be with God. So the true church is a state of consciousness. The true church is a state of consciousness. It's not a building. A building may build up as part of the consciousness, may express out as part of the consciousness, and you get that with collective worship, but it's not what the true church is. The true church is the consciousness that sustains it all. The second part of that, hold on, I did want to check for other comments. Okay. The second part of that is that the true church, there are no rituals. God needs no rituals. He wants only our hearts and our minds. There are no rituals. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I have learned. I have learned that I need rituals. That's what I have learned. I have learned that I need rituals. And I think the challenge is that we all need rituals. But the challenge is when we try to pass down our rituals as if they are hard and fast and true for all people, all times, all spaces, all times. So I have found that when I get ready to meditate, one of the first things that I need to do is I need to be in a quiet space. I need to settle down, and I need to relax, and I need just to breathe deeply and relax my body, because I carry a lot of tension. So generally my shoulders are up like this, and I may not even realize they're up like this, and so I've got to just take a moment and relax. Sometimes this will be furrowed, and I've got to just relax this part of my body. Sometimes my abdomen will be, and so but that's a ritual. So it's me that needs the rituals. The challenge is when we pass down these rituals as if they are hard and fast, as if they are the only way to access God. And so we have some rituals that have come about in the church that were valuable for a time because they were very helpful with helping people to access that energy intelligence. The problem is when they got passed down as the only way to access that energy intelligence. That is not true. That energy intelligence, it simply is, and all you need to do is be in a state. And so my rituals help me. One of the things that I resisted a long time, and I shared this with you guys, I resisted having some kind of place that was like a prayer place in my home. And finally, I watched the movie The War Room and realized in a previous situation where I was living, I'd actually created my bedroom into a prayer room. And so I went ahead and set up a prayer room in my closet. And I find that when I go in that space, that the moment that I sit down, it cuts my relaxation time in half. So the rituals are not for God, the rituals are for us. And many times we're carrying out the rituals as if it's going to persuade God. And you can't persuade God to be any more good to you than God already is. The only thing that you can do is persuade yourself to relax enough to be available to all the good that is present. Ray says, working with us on being with God would be another wonderful class. Yes. Marvin says, I have a mental house I go to. Ooh, I like that, Marvin. I like that. Kanisha says, I need to do that. Feel God. That's what I've been missing and distracted by figuring out the finances. Yes. Yes, yes. And again, don't not go to Sunday service. I'm just telling you, just know that you don't need Sunday service to have church. That right where you are, the church is right there with you, that you can practice feeling after God. But if you need help, get help. So many times we don't want to ask for help. But the thing is that the only way out of some of the place, people need people. Somebody right now needs you to pick up the phone and call them and say, you know what, I've been praying for you. I want you to know that I believe in you, that I know that you've been going through something, but that it's been put on my heart to call you and encourage you, which I'm taking as a sign that this is over. Somebody needs that. People need people. So if you need a church to help you concentrate, do that. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in that at all. If right now where you are spiritually is that I concentrate better when I'm in a group that's concentrated on God, do that. Do that, please. But while you are doing that, know within yourself that you are growing the spiritual legs and the spiritual feet to be able to do it for yourself, whether you're near a church or not. Marvin says, to clarify, a house is in my imagination. Oh, no, I knew what you meant, Marvin. I knew exactly what you meant. Constance says, thank you for clarifying rituals. The way you explained it makes sense. It's when we think that in order to commune with God, it needs to be done in a certain way. We are all free will individuals, and how we feel God is our own. Yes, 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 yes. Alita says, churches, the buildings, have caused people to look outside of themselves to be with God. You have to go there to be in God's presence. Then they invite God into his own house. Right, right, right. Yes, yes, yes. Andrea says, amen to that, Rev. It is me standing in need of prayer, not God. God has already done it all. It just needs the awareness. Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Phyllis says, in its outer sense, the Church of Christ consists of all persons in whom the consciousness of truth has become firmly established. Yes. Whether or not they belong to a denominational church made no difference. They comprise that great brotherhood which Jesus Christ established in spirit. Yes, 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 yes. And the thing is that what happens in the outer is a reflection of what's happening on the inner. So these churches that do pop up are a reflection of what's happening inwardly. But it doesn't happen the other way around. You don't do it in the outer and then push it back inside and say, go happen inside of me. It's got to happen inside of you in order for it to be so. The true church is built over time, and this speaks to the question that Alethea asked earlier, which is how do we unmagnetize ourselves? Little by little, day by day, the consciousness to be your best self is built. There are no shortcuts to Christ consciousness. Now, let me tell you something. There's a book I'm reading. I love, 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 love this book. I recommend it. Go get it. Go put it in your library. It's called The Slight Edge, Jeff Olson. The Slight Edge. When I read it, it's just wonderful. It's just a wonderful book because now this is a business book and he's talking about building businesses. All right? But don't worry about that because it's going to be valuable for you no matter what. What he's talking about is that little by little, day by day, that everybody's looking for the quantum leap. There is no such thing as the quantum leap. Just clear that out of your memory. That often what happens is that what you see that looks like a quantum leap is the little by little, day by day, doing the mundane things. And so what he recommends, I should have brought this down. You know what? I do have this. I can show you this part. What he recommends is figuring out what your thing is. You're not tracking charts. Okay, figuring out what your thing is, and then let's say your thing is writing, and you want to be a published author. Then you have what is the little thing that you can do every day that's part of moving you forward. The thing about the little thing is that it's very easy to do, but it's so easy to do that it's easy not to do. And the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is that successful people are willing to do the thing that's easy to do, but so easy that it's easy not to do. For example, one of the things that I did is I changed my diet, right? That's not true. I changed when I eat, right? And so I tightened the eating window, and I don't eat out the eating window. Now, it's very easy to do that, right? But I also find myself, like last night where I came home and I had shopped, and so I got home after my dinner time or whatever, after it was time for me to eat. And so it was very easy for me to maintain my not eating after a certain time, but it's also easy not to do. What's one night, right? What's one night? And the thing is that that's how we treat life. That it's easy to do, but it's also easy not to do. You may be writing, right, and you have a writing discipline, and you say, you know what, I'm going to write 1 page per day. That's easy. Depending on who you are, that's an easy thing to do, to write 1 page a day. But it's also easy not to do. And the people who are unsuccessful, that what happens is that when it's easy not to do, they don't do it. And the thing is that you and someone else may be traveling along on the same trajectory where you have the things that are easy to do but easy not to do, and it looks like you're at the same point, same level. But what happens is that over time there's a bend that happens, and this is the person that's doing what's easy to do but also easy not to do, but they're going ahead and doing it, and this is the person that's not doing what's easy to do and falling into easy not to do. He talks about, getting up in the morning and, the alarm goes off and you instinctively reach for the snooze. Easy to do, easy not to do. And the reason that this matters is that in our minds where we sit, everything looks linear, right? That point A to point B appears to be linear. And it looks like that, but it's not. Because the truth is that everything curves. There is no such thing as a straight line. And so the place on earth where you sit today looks flat. Everywhere you look, when I look around my house, it looks flat. It looks level, right? In fact, they use something called a leveler to like measure and plan the building of this building. And so where I am looks flat. But if I could get a high enough vantage point, I could actually see the part of the curvature of the earth that I sit on. And this is the truth of life, which is that everything curves. And so you think I'm just hitting the snooze button and it's just this one day that I'm sleeping in. But the truth is that life curves. And so every action that you take curves you in a particular direction. And so when we talk about building the true consciousness, build the true church, right? Building the consciousness for that. We're talking about working with the curvature. Your best friend is time. Your best friend is time. And what successful people do is that they master doing the things that are easy to do, but so easy to do, they're also easy not to do. And giving time, enough time to catch up with them and bend them up in the direction of where they want to go. And so, and you know this if you've worked out. When you work out that first day, it's just a workout. You probably sore, and you're like, whew, I hope this gets all 50 pounds off this one workout, right? And you know that's not going to happen, but you hope for it. And you know, and you convince yourself, all right, I got to show back up tomorrow, right? And the thing is that if you keep showing up, easy to do, but also easy not to do, eventually you're going to curve in a direction toward the body that you want. But it's also easy not to do, and that's the difference. And again, those who are unsuccessful is because what they are. The thing is that they are not willing to do the easy things that require you to do them every day, but they're so easy that they're easy not to do. Alethea says Jeff's last name again. It is Olson, O-L-S-O-N, Jeff Olson. Excellent. I put if you go to my website, there's actually a link on there. It'll take you right to Amazon, so you can find the book if you go to revsherri.com for this blog post on the True Church. Constance says, OMG, listening to Abraham today, and they did the same thing. There is no quantum leap. Come on now, God. Yes, there is no quantum leap. Alita says, I know, right? I say, I do a Neville a day. So easy not to do. It really is. When I finish with you guys tonight, I've got to go sit down and write because I made a commitment to do 2 hours on my book on Empower the Giant because I'm cleaning up all of the internal material for the book. So easy to do, but also easy not to do. And that's the difference. And the thing to remember is that everything curves. That's the part that when you're in the moment, it feels like a straight line. Well, I just didn't go to the gym today. Life curves and everything curves. And the question is, what direction are the things that you are habitually doing curving you towards? Excellent, excellent book. And the true church, which is why I want to bring this up with this, is that it's a little by little, day by day. That what happens that when you make that daily commitment to sit down to pray every day, that when you make that commitment to journal to God every day, that when you make that commitment to meditate every day, that little by little, day by day, that there's something that's happening in you. The way that I work on my lessons when I'm preparing for you guys and preparing for Sunday service, I don't just wait till Saturday night or wait till Wednesday night. That I start working with the material at least a week in advance, right? Because I have to give it time to come alive in me, right? Little by little, day by day. And so I don't wait till Wednesday to get ready for Thursday because it's got to happen in me. And so it's the same thing with you, that these things have to happen. You have to sit with it long enough for it to curve in you and pull you in the direction that it wants to go. And what also happens when you do this day by day, little by little, you change the rewiring of your brain. But you don't rewire your brain in one day. You rewire your brain over time. What the Bleep Do We Know? One of my favorite films. What the Bleep Do We Know? Candace Pert is one of the scientists featured in there, and I think her book is called The Molecules of Emotion. But what she talks about is that as we practice different emotions, that our molecules become magnetized for those emotions. And so the person who tends to anger has been tending toward anger. So at the point that it looks like they've got a hair trigger, they practice getting to that point. I wasn't born with a hair trigger anger emotion, but they practice doing it over time, little by little, day by day. And so those moments, every moment matters. Every moment matters because it curves you in a particular direction. Marvin says, I had lesson ready for Wednesday, but Spirit said I needed to work on a new outline Tuesday evening. So that is what I did, and it came out fine. Absolutely. Phyllis says, who is Abraham? Phyllis, Abraham, well, Esther Hicks is who you want to look up, and she channels a consciousness called Abraham. And she's a number of books. The one that I love the most is Ask and It Is Given, is probably her seminal work. And then the others really build on that. But Ask and It Is Given is phenomenal. And so you'll hear it spoke of as Abraham Hicks. You'll hear Esther Hicks, her husband, who used to travel and speak with her, Jerry Hicks, has made his transition. But she's a phenomenal teacher, Abraham Hicks, or Esther Hicks. And the book that I would say start with is Ask and It Is Given. Finally, the true church has no outer authority. In the true church of Jesus Christ, there are no outer authorities. There is only one authority, and that is God. Now, this is challenging, and I think this is probably why people leave mystical Christianity and go back to a traditional teaching, perhaps. I'm not saying that this is the reason, but this is my estimation, is that people need rules. It is very difficult. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. There are people who need boundaries, and they need them the way that some organizations set them up. When you come into New Thought, there is no creed. There is no statement that you are supposed to say, I believe Jesus was born of a virgin and died on the cross. There's no creed in New Thought where you have to say, I believe these things, and right? But there is an authority, and that authority is God. Now, what happens as you start to build the true consciousness is that you learn to work with God and submit yourself to God alone. What I can tell you from experience is that it will demand more of you than any traditional church ever will. Marvin says people need order. We like to make sense of things. Yes, and I agree with that statement, but here's the thing. You want God's order. You don't want man's order, because man's order comes with man's consciousness. What I have found, and I'm seeing this now, and it is the most amazing thing that happened in the last few weeks, and literally in the last few weeks. And I was telling somebody I was so amazed by it. As I have submitted to the order of God, my life has gotten in order. Now, it was already getting in order, but I'm seeing things happen at a faster rate. It is the most amazing thing. Little things like a clean house. I don't know if you remember, it was a bunch of mess on that thing for the first time in ever. Now, for a good portion of my adult life, I had professional cleaning help. Okay, not lately. Lately, it's just looked different, but whatever. But for the most part, I've had professional cleaning help. For the first time ever, I have no clutter in my house. Even when I had professional cleaning help, I had clutter. It was just neatly stacked away and put away. And what happens when you begin to build that true church in you is that the things that you need to do to establish the order of God in your life, world, and affairs, they become easy to do. So whereas we're trying to figure out how to get rid of the clutter was like, it seemed to creep up all by itself. One minute I cleaned the table off, and it seemed like the next minute it was back on the table, right? But when you submit to the inner authority, it begins to put your life in order. And so, but again, it's little by little, day by day. This was not an overnight thing, but I had to reflect for the first time in my lifetime. In my lifetime, I don't have, I'm not going to give ages here, but in my lifetime, for the first time, there's no clutter in my house. That's only God. And so I'm watching this, and I'm seeing how it's being built from the inside out. It's not being built from the outside in, because even when there was somebody cleaning my house, it was clutter everywhere. It just looked good. It was just good looking clutter. So what I'm telling you is what I know, that when you submit to the authority of God, it puts your life together. It puts your life in order. And it's not just that. Yes, the clutter is gone, but it's the baseboards are clean. The shutters are clean. The sink, come on now. The order, and I'm not just saying just the clean house. There's many other things that are happening in my experience, but this was the most amazing miracle this week. So that outer authority, that what happens is that you come into new thought or into a mystical teaching, and if you don't do the work, you never get to the reward. And so it stays this philosophy that feels good, but has no fruit to it. It feels good to say that I am God. That feels good, right? It feels a whole lot better than say I'm a worm, I'm a victim, right? This is way, way better, right? But there's something that happens that when you begin to make those words true for you, and it's no longer just what you're talking about, and it's no longer about you feeling superior to somebody who needs a traditional church. It's no longer about you thinking that you got something better than somebody, but it becomes a practice. It becomes who you are, and so there's something that you're standing on that's just different. And so, and this is why, again, I think that the order comes from God. You want God's order, right? You want, because the orderliness is tied to your connection to God, and as you get more connected to God, you get more orderly. As you get, mark my words, as you get more connected to God, you get more orderly. And so you don't need man's order to get you in order. You get yourself in order. And it's not heavy lifting. Before, when I was fighting the clutter, and it's not just the clutter, it was in other areas of my life that were just out of order as well, with finances, relationships, a whole lot of stuff, that it was heavy lifting. And the reason Jesus says my burden is light is because when you get the consciousness, it goes like that. There's no clutter. I wish I could take the camera upstairs and show y'all. There's no clutter. Okay? Hello? Bookshelves clean. I was thinking if I was going to show the camera, but I don't know if it's going to be, you'll be able to see that far. Bookshelves clean. In my house, there will be books stacked, and then there'll be books on top of books, and then there'll be papers on top of the books. Gone. So as you build this true church, now I still got work to do now. Marvin says there's no clutter in your mind, evidently. Yes, but there's still work to do. What I'm telling you is that when you begin to work with God, God puts you back together again. And the things that were heavy lifting before, that as you get the consciousness, it's like nothing. It doesn't take anything. There's no stress to it, right? It used to be a burden to get these things done. Now there's no stress to it. It used to be a thing that was an issue for me. Now there's no stress to it, right? And that's why you want God's order. And so I think that the people coming to New Thought not just don't take classes, Alita, but that they don't ever learn to work with God and to learn to practice that at one minute. And that is not something that happens overnight. That you don't get that on the first Sunday service, and you don't get that in the 50th class. It is a day by day, little by little, bit by bit, slight edge, and then when it starts to curve up, all anybody ever sees is the success. They don't see the hot mess that you walked out of, that you curved up out of, right? Y'all didn't, well, y'all saw part of it, but y'all didn't see the hot mess that I curved up out of. So, uh, Alethea says, for me, for the first time in my life, I have clutter. What happened? There's some order, Alethea, that needs to be established. There's some order, and it's just to begin to declare it, that I declare God's divine order in my life, world, and affairs. I declare, and mean it. Like I declare God's order in my life, world, and affairs. Get in order. Sometimes I'm in a car and I have a whole little monologue going. I'm calling on order. When I walk out of my house, I'm calling on order. I'm calling on the order of God in every way that is imaginable, and it begins with my word, but then it follows through with my actions, and I continue to keep it in the forefront of my mind. But the other thing is I also study every day. Every day there's a portion of my life that is given to study. When I sit down to eat, I watch some type of training or motivational or with some kind of feeding my mind constantly. I read something every day. Every day I'm reading something, whether I'm reading the Slight Edge or I'm getting ready for a class or something, but there's something that I'm taking into my mind on a daily basis. I pray daily. I meditate daily for the most part. Sometimes I'm back to establishing my meditation practice. I wanted to share this with you guys because I thought this was helpful. I made these little charts for myself. Hold on. So I'm hoping you can see that. But this is my little checklist, right? And this comes from Sean Aker, who wrote The Happiness Advantage, and he recommends these 5 things, not necessarily in order, but where, and I don't have the ones that I actually use because I print these out and I have little stickers that I put on them. And so 3 things I'm grateful for. So every day I try to write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, right? Where I sit and I actually think, and I can't write the same thing twice, so I've got to always think of something different. I will journal 2 minutes of something positive that happened yesterday within the last 24 hours. Daily meditation, 1 random act of kindness, and then 15 minutes of daily exercise. And so as my goal is to have stars on the whole chart, and I have this going through the end of June. But it's just one of those things that it is, I find that visuals for me help me, meaning I could say do those things, but actually if I have a little chart and I'm seeing some stars missing, my mind starts kicking in like, okay, what do I need to do? Let me find something that I can add to that. Alethea, you had asked the question about how do you unmagnetize yourself. It is through doing these daily disciplines, whatever that is for you. For me, that includes the reading, it includes the prayer, and it's going to include exercise. God help me, it's going to include exercise. It doesn't yet. That's why it's on the chart. The random act of kindness, finding something that I can do kind once a day that is the kindest thing that I can imagine doing. Something that one of my church members does that I think is awesome, and since it's a lot of UFBL people here, I'll throw it out there. He takes a daily inspiration and puts a little money in it and will give it to a person that he may run into on the street. And he gave it to one guy who came back and said, do you have another one of these, the daily inspiration? So that is awesome. That's an excellent use of the daily inspiration. I actually challenged my congregation to buy a couple, one for themselves and maybe 2 or 3 extra that they could put a little something in and give to somebody on the street. Give them some food, spiritual food, and give them some money to get some real food or whatever they want to use the money for. Phyllis says that is one of the 12 powers. Tell me what you mean, Phyllis, when you say that's one of the 12 powers. Kanisha says expound on the order of God. So order is heaven's first law. The universe is orderly. And when you look at how God's universe is set up, right? I'm not even talking about what you cannot see. That's orderly too. But if you look at nature, nature is exceptionally orderly. That in fact, if I said winter, spring, summer, fall, it would even sound wrong if I said winter, summer, fall, spring. It'd be like, what? Like, it doesn't even make sense. I mean, I know those are the names that we've given to those seasons, but when we understand them, that they're always in order, that there's a faithfulness to them. There is, even if winter is short or if summer is long or vice versa, there is still a period of time called fall, right? What we've given the name, autumn, that is going to follow the summer period before we get into the winter period. And there is no point in the history of the entire universe that autumn has been skipped or that spring has been skipped. So the universe is orderly. Everything about the universe is orderly. The Earth's rotation on its axis. The Earth continually rotates. There's never a point where it stops rotating. That there is an orderliness to the universe. Even when it's raining, the sun is out, right? And we know this because if anyone has flown in the rain, you know that once you get above the rain clouds, it's like a sunny day, right? So there's an order to the universe. There's an order to how things work. Land, when you're farming land, it has to be you use it, and then it has to lay fallow for a period of time before you can use it again, because that's part of the rest work cycle, right? So there is this order to the universe, and that order is it's in us naturally, but we have to make it manifest or allow it to be made manifest in our experience. Phyllis was saying order is one of the 12 faculties. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so when we say the order of God, what we're saying is that I want this order established in my life. One of the things that I learned, this is why I changed my diet, is that, there was a time when we ate, and then there was a time when we didn't eat, meaning that we ate during the day, and we may have had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We didn't do any snacking. The snacking industry is a very recent industry. That is not something that many of us grew up with, or it came about in our lifetimes, right? So we ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then at nighttime, once dinner was finished, that was it. And even if you didn't go to bed, that was it. There was no more eating. You could get a second helping, but there was no more eating. And so we had this fasting window, and part of what has created this obesity epidemic is that we eat around the clock, and we're eating all day long, right? We're eating in between meals. Some of us don't even sit at the table to eat anymore. We eat in our beds, right? And so or we eat in our bedrooms or in our offices. And so there is an order that has been lost to how we live life. And so what you find when you ask for the order of God to be established in your life is that some of the things that were hard and fast rules, say for our parents or our grandparents, begin to be things that we may pick back up because we are allowing the order to be established. But now it's not about rules, it's about just doing things in a way that makes sense, that honors our bodies, and that puts us in the best position to actually accomplish the work that God called us to do. Yolanda says, what do you mean work with God? Do you mean praying and reading the Word of God? Yes. I mean praying and reading the Word of God, but also practicing listening. So there are two parts to working with God. There is the reading and the praying, but then you got to get up and you got to do based on what you heard. And the only way to hear God is to practice what you think you heard. I mean, that's the only way to do it, is that you've got to pray. So you've got to ask a question, Spirit, what do you want me to do today? Right? Or which direction do you want me to go with this work or book or whatever it is that you're working on? And then you've got to act on what you think you heard so that you can develop the listening skill. There's no other way to do it. It is that the way that you get to the place where you can say, God told me, and it's not just you trying to posture for somebody, is that you've got to practice using what you heard or what you think you heard. And so working with God is twofold. It's the sitting, listening, and being available, but then second to that is the get up and the doing. And learning to learning to know what it feels like when you've heard God versus when you've heard your interpretation of God, because there's only one voice. There's only one voice. Everything else that you're hearing is an interpretation on the one voice, but it's not a second voice, right? There are no two. There's only one. There's only one voice speaking in you. So when you say, oh, is it me or is it God? The only thing is that is it God or is it your interpretation of God? But there's no two voices. There's just one voice. And so what you're learning to do is to hear the voice above the din of all the interpretations. And this is why you cannot submit to man's authority. You've got to submit to God's authority, because man's authority is man's opinion. And don't man know what God is saying inside of you? You do know the instructions that God is giving you, God is only giving to you. So there's a confidence thing that's got to happen with learning to hear the voice of God, because no one else is receiving the instructions that you have heard, and that's a scary place to be. For me, that's a scary place to be. No one else is hearing the instructions that you are hearing, and so you've got to have, forgive this language, you got to have the balls to stand up on it, on what you heard, and say, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm not looking for your agreement, your cosign, or nothing, because this is what God told me to do. Ooh, Constance, thank you for that. She says, we will never see the face of God, only the effect. Yes, and that's how we know. We know God through the effects. Yes. Marvin says, I have started writing thank you notes to God. Another one of Neville's. That's a great idea. Alita says, sun rises daily. Yes, it does. Marvin says, grow up here. Yeah, sorry for that language, y'all. I apologize. Phyllis says, we have to enter the Holy of Holies. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So last thing, what you gonna do? Will you make a commitment to build the true church within you? Can you deal with the idea of no outer authority? And did you hear something tonight that can make a difference in your tomorrow? And would you leave me a comment on the YouTube video for this lesson? I went way over. way over. Lord, first of all, thank you everybody on the East Coast. My apologies if it felt right, but I definitely respect your time, so I apologize for the late time. Any questions? Casa says, yeah, it's 11:38. I'm sorry, girl. I apologize. My apologies. Get the book. Yes, Andrea says you were feeling it. Yes, but get the book, The Slight Edge, y'all. I'm telling you, it is a perfect companion to the type of things that we study spiritually. Phyllis says, but it was good. Thank you, Phyllis. It is a perfect companion. I love to find things. I felt this way when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I felt that it was a practical way to live out the Fillmore teachings. And I feel this way about the consciousness building because that day by day, little by little, it's developing the philosophy for doing that. And that's what you want. You want that philosophy for doing that day by day work. Because if you don't have that right philosophy, then it's very easy to just say, you know, hey, I just didn't go to the gym today, right? But when you realize that life curves, that's a game changer. Constance says, absolutely great class. You had everyone participating. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for your dedication and excellence. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for tonight. Next week, we will be on the divinity of Jesus Christ, chapter 16, the divinity of Jesus Christ. And you can download that. That's already available on the website. You can download that right at revsherri.com. Thank you so much. Have a great night, and I will see you guys next week. God bless.